Welcome to the Balkans. To say that the Southern Slavs have had it rough would be a complete and gross understatement. Under what seemed like eternal Austrian and Ottoman domination, the Serbs, Croats, Slovenes and Bosnians all found themselves thrown into the powder keg once the end of the First World War resulted in their sudden independence. Emerging from the rotting, dismembered corpse of Austria-Hungary, the South Slavs united into one entity. From the Croats, Serbs and Slovenes came the first Pan-Slavic state in the Balkans, with the Serbian Karađorđević at its helm. For the first time, a newfound sense of hope and pride emerged. The people were excited to choose the next steps forward for Yugoslavia. However, this newfound unity drew the ire of the Kingdom of Italy. While they too fought on the same side and for goals we resonate with, nationalist ambitions often get in the way of peace and friendship. They seek to expand into the Balkans and form their Mare Nostrum. Besides Italy, the spectre of separatist movements within and external forces seeking to prevent brotherly unity continue to loom. But despite the circumstances, the young nation of Yugoslavia has the potential to become a new modern powerhouse, not just in the Balkans, but perhaps even further beyond. King Alexander has long been assassinated by a Croatian nationalist during his diplomatic mission to Paris. In his passing, he left Yugoslavia to the underage King Peter II and his cousin, Prince Paul, who assumed the regency. The continuation of the monarchy in its current form has only strengthened the dominance of the Serbian majority and the noble bourgeoisie. Us communists successfully infiltrated the royal army and secured arms for the impending revolution with the help of a sympathetic agent in the court. As Prince Paul empowered King Peter II and made overtures to the west, we had the army disbanded and our partisans ready for action. The revolutionary bands marched towards Zagreb and Skopje to fully put down the reactionary elements, which included fascists and royalist upstarts. After the swift revolution toppled Prince Paul, we elected the charismatic Josip Broz Tito to serve as interim leader of the Yugoslav Workers' Council. Running on a platform of Slavic unity, he advocated for the spread of the revolution into Bulgaria. However, Tito had decided on a, shall we say, revolutionary approach to dealing with the king. He assumed regency over the young Peter II, believing that he can be re-educated to be a model leader of the communist revolution. This is quite the dream team indeed. Doing away with Serbian majority rule and towards greater harmony, Tito began a series of reforms to federalize the nation and promote minority involvement in politics, transitioning away from the idea of a Serbian empire and toward true workers' unity. Just by our luck, the huddled masses of the Bulgarian working class yearn to loose their chains. It is time to answer the call to oust the corrupt and decadent Tsar Boris III and be one in Slavic workers' unity. With careful planning, we started off strong against the Bulgarian troops. In midst of the war, we successfully negotiated autonomy for Slovenia in exchange for the mobilization of their workers for the war effort. Besides Bulgaria, we also began preparations to spread the revolution in Albania and by extension Italy. The working class battalions made headway in Vidin and Sveti Vrach, sending Boris's royal troops packing further inland. Continuing further into Bulgaria, we liberated the oppressed peasantry acre by acre through effective utilization of Slavic unity and solidarity with the workers and peasants. We made the most progress in the south, allowing us to stretch the smaller Bulgarian forces and close in on the capital Sofia. With the capital encircled, we effectively locked the majority of the Bulgarian forces in. Meanwhile, we also managed to secure autonomy for the workers of Croatia, but due to the influence of the Ustaše and the potential liability of a united Croatia, we created a separate Dalmatian council to ensure a check and balance and immediately began on a Bosniak one. While Sofia remained under siege, we utilized our rear forces to push forth east. Eventually, Sofia fell and Tsar Boris III capitulated to the revolutionary fervor. In line with President Tito's federalization reforms, he worked to empower the local councils and formed a workers' regency over Simeon II for our Bulgarian brothers. With the preparations for the revolution in Albania underway, we moved our troops west towards the Italian border to aid the Slovene, Croats, as well as the Albanians to fight off their fascist oppressors. Our political reforms also granted autonomy to Bosnia, alongside the minorities in Serbia, with Yugoslavia fully devolved into a pluralistic workers' paradise. We called for the liberation of the Albanian working class, using Kosovo to promote Albanian solidarity and national unity. In the first hours of war, Kosovo battalions thundered down the Korat mountains, hoping to capture the centers of authority through a three-pronged lightning offensive before the Italians could aid the fascist usurper King Zog. As expected, King Zog sought the help of the Italians, who both shared the common goal of dismantling our brotherly union. With the help of the Dalmatian and Slovenian general staff, we coordinated a hybrid plan to take on the Italians, involving both fast offensive maneuvers and attrition. In Zara, we set it up as a trap to goad Italian divisions into moving in as an easy landing spot, only to overwhelm them with numerical and geographical superiority. In the north, we coordinated an offensive to liberate Istria and Fiume. In days, we encircled Fiume and cut off their supply, beginning the siege. Back in Albania, Kosovar forces successfully bypassed the Albanian defences, allowing us to close in on Tirana. We had also completed the solidification of King Peter II's authority over the republics, and captured Tirana, Durrës, and Škoda, all in one fell swoop. On the Istrian front, the lack of preparedness on the Italian side rendered our offensive with much greater success than initially envisioned. King Zog was overthrown and Albania was liberated. The Kosovar Workers' Council quickly assumed control over the power vacuum, establishing a Greater Albania with the nominal authority of King Peter II. With Albania secured, we continued the plan of wearing down the Italian forces in the ports of Zara and bringing the siege of Fiume to a decisive end. We continued to move into the north and aid local revolutionaries in resisting Mussolini's oppression. We made a bold bid to capture the prized port city of Venice and wore down the fascist forces in Zara. Due to a grave miscalculation, we had to pull out of South Tyrol and reorganize our forces back into areas with better supply. The Italians, while they seemed to have slowly regained their momentum and launched various counter-offensives, Venice eventually fell to the will of the workers. The afterglow of the victory allowed us to resupply our troops, and we even managed to capture Padova. As the rest of Veneto fell, we found ourselves relying on the Zara slaughter field to whittle down the Italian forces surrounding our occupation zones. This strategy continued to prove effective, as Mussolini was intelligent enough to order troops to die in Zara, diverting precious manpower away from northern Italy and Milan. We marched straight towards Genoa and cut the Italian front into two, scoring victories in Bologna and Parma. The fall of La Spezia gave us a foothold into Tuscany and delivered another blow to the prestige of Mussolini's iron fist over Italy. Soon after, the Piedmontese pocket defected over to the revolutionary side and started a civil war against the fascist government. The rest of the Italian army, disillusioned with Mussolini's now obvious incompetence, turned and joined the rest of the new regime, forcing the fascist party to flee to Sicily and eventually capitulate. We formed a joint Italian government between the Communist Party and King Vittorio Emanuele III, and liberated Libya and Ethiopia from colonial control. The cradle of fascism had finally collapsed by Tito's hand. With Greater Albania realized, Istria, Zadar, and the colonies liberated, as well as the cradle of fascism neutralized, our attention turned to Hungary, where our lobbying efforts through the trade unions deterred Horthy from considering ties with the Axis. Alarmed by the growing fascist presence, we turned our agents towards the Romanian court, hoping to utilize popular discontent against any potential alliance with the German Reich, as well as to bring both nations under the Workers' Union. We prepared a preemptive offensive into Hungary, citing the need to free our trodden Czechoslovak brothers under the Hungarian boot. We called Croatia in and threw them to the Hungarian wolves. With the bulk of Hungarian forces busying themselves with our Croatian partisans, we launched the offensive from Vojvodina and pushed forth while they overstretched themselves. One advantage of federalization was that for as long as individual republics were not caught into war, they were spared from the wrath of the fighting. Therefore, Bosnia held themselves as the bulwark that essentially prevented Hungary from marching in and taking Belgrade. On the other hand, we were free to further concentrate our forces and move north into Budapest. By the time the Hungarian forces realized, it was too late. They folded even before we managed to box them into Croatia and fully decimate them. After overthrowing Horthy's bourgeois dictatorship and liberating our fellow Czechoslovaks, we prepared for a revolution in Romania. To keep up with the expansion of our forces, we recruited an Italian collaborator with exceptional skills and leadership into our general staff. While the German Reich rampages itself throughout Western Europe, we took the opportunity to exploit France's weakness to bring Romania into the fold. The Romanian working class had enough of Carol II's corruption and debauchery, ruining the country like he did his prior marriage. As Paris fell, Romania found itself alone against the tides of revolution. We prepared an offensive from Bulgaria and called them in with promises of liberating Dobruja. The Bulgarian border remained largely undefended, and this allowed us to waltz into Bucharest welcomed with open arms. From the west, Hungarian and Transylvanian forces were called in to join the fight to overthrow Carol II. It was a much harder fight in Transylvania, but we still managed to punch through. With Romanian forces completely busy on all sides, we closed in on the Serbian border to encircle them. Not long after, the Romanian working class saw the writing on the wall and rose up to our side. Most of the city centers were taken and the Romanian army was routed to the countryside, resulting to guerrilla warfare. But alas, it can only last for so long until they had to give in to the will of the people. Banat formed the basis of the new Romanian government, and Bessarabia came under direct occupation for a future war with the Soviets, to one day set right their bastardization of the revolution. With the autonomous councils now adequately self-sustaining, Tito felt time to start centralizing the cause of Yugoslavia once more. We prepared to further the revolution in Greece and began establishing a partisan network to seek out allies in the Soviet Union. Back home, Tito completed the centralization of Yugoslavia, uniting the workers of the Balkans under one blue-white-red. In Bessarabia, we gave autonomy to the Ukrainian minorities, as well as formed a rival regime to counter the puppet Ukrainian SSR. To accommodate large droves of Ukrainian refugees, we expanded this new state to encompass North Bukovina and Bessarabia. We expanded recruitment of partisan bands from Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine and our home front. Utilizing our military access, we infiltrated our partisans first into Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltics, and eventually throughout the entirety of the USSR. We connected with anti-Soviet leftist groups more amicable to Tito's benevolent model of socialism. Together, we will free the Eastern Slavs from Stalin's virtual red tsardom. With preparation of the revolution in Greece complete, we rallied the Balkan workers for war. As expected, the Greek troops came out of their bunkers and walked right into our trap. We exploited gaps all over their formations and went around them, capturing their forts and cutting them off from each other. The Greek forces were outnumbered and disorganized, finding themselves completely caught off guard, disadvantaged by superior forces, and easily encircled as we bypassed them and captured Thessaloniki. With further allied investment, we moved further into the Greek heartland, calculating that we should be in Athens by Christmas. After some reorganization, we were able to gain the support of the Greek peasants and the working class to march upon Athens. The Greek troops, unable to hold on to the countryside, retreated to the capital, mounting a hopeless last stand against the Balkan United Front. Upon its capture, we moved in to deal with the remnants in Corinth, and finally they decided that their king was no longer worth fighting for. As part of Balkan and Orthodox Brotherhood, we annexed Greece and integrated it into our union. The final stages of revolution against Stalin are into play. We formed an alliance with the Mladorossi, a group of pragmatic white movement emigres who believe the Soviet system can coexist with the Tsar, as well as anti-Soviet leftists and defectors looking for a new socialist direction. Together, they formed the basis of a new post-Stalin regime, and they agreed to crown Peter II the new Tsar of all Russia once Stalin was overthrown, uniting Yugoslavia and Russia under one crown and one workers' banner. We continued to further infiltrate the Soviet system and foment Pan-Slavic resistance against the Georgian-dominated CPSU. Slowly but surely, the Russians, Belarusians, Ukrainians, and Poles under the Soviet thumb are coming around, ready for the return of the Tsardom. As the news suggests, Soviet communism truly is a failure in of itself. It is up to Tito himself to salvage the revolution in the eyes of the Russians. Now, the biggest undertaking of our existence. As our intel suggests, the Slavs under Soviet oppression have suffered enough from the failures of collectivization, poorly planned industrial expansion, and famine. All across the Volga and the Dnieper, particularly in Tuva, the people clamor for revolution, for Tito and Peter to finally come in to salvage the socialist dream completely shattered by Stalin's thirst for power. Once we rallied the Ukrainian revolutionaries with the help of one Nikita Khrushchev, the rest soon followed suit, with nearly every major city falling to our partisans. The Red Army soon defected and arrested Stalin and his Georgian-dominated Politburo. Bessarabia, Ukraine absorbed the Ukraine SSR, liberating the birthplace of the Kievan Rus. We also created an autonomous council in the Karelian territories, absorbed the rest of Russia, and assumed military occupation over Tuva and Mongolia. The Slavic workers and peasants in the east breathed free under the new rule of the Mladorossi Grand Duke, Alexander Kazembek, and Peter II of Yugoslavia, crowned Tsar of all Russia, uniting East and South Slavia under a personal union. With Peter II assuming the title of Tsar of all Russia, comes the long-awaited quest of securing the Bosphorus and the reconquest of Istanbul, or Constantinople, for the Orthodoxy. Our goal of spreading the revolution has drawn the eye of the German Reich, the main nemesis of the Slavic race and communism. Without much resistance, Istanbul fell and we pressed forth to Ankara. In the north, we retreated behind the Danube River and held a defensive line, while pressing forth to ensure the Germans do not have a foothold in the Caucasus. We focused the bulk of our offensive power into delivering a decisive blow to the traitors of Ataturk, invoking our role as the protector of Christianity and the working class in the Middle East to wipe out all remaining bastions of the Turkish counter-revolution before the Germans could arrive. While the Danube River line held against the German onslaught, we chased the Turkish soldiers down to the Adana and Kurdish mountains. They held one last stand in Gaziantep before the Ankara regime finally surrendered upon its capture and handed power to the Turkish workers. Together with Free French forces in Syria, we destroyed the remaining counter-revolutionary guerrillas in Hatay and moved our forces to secure the Aegean coast of Anatolia. In a lightning offensive, we split their forces down through Izmir and whittled both sides of their stranded forces down to dust, and secured the coastline from German reinforcements and providing buffer against a potential front in the Caucasus. We moved most of our forces to finally countering the relentless onslaught of the German Reich, the scourge of all Slavs and workers. Through careful maneuvering, we launched counter-attacks against the German forces, crossing the Danube River to finally liberate our Croatian, Slovenian and Hungarian brothers, and destroyed the fascist collaborators for good. With slow progress, the German line was slowly starting to break after we amped up offensive pressure on them through fresh reinforcements from Anatolia. We pushed the Germans out of Croatia and Hungary and regained the initiative, moving in to encircle the unlucky stragglers. With help of the Czechoslovak Legion in Kosice, we encircled 10 more German divisions in Hungary and renewed our offensive towards the rest of Croatia and Slovenia. Due to German disorganization, we even managed to push into Austria and encircle Zagreb, taking out 5 more German divisions, all while restoring Croatian heritage back to the Slavic nation. With the Germans nearly out of our lands, we shall finally take the war back to their homeland, by first aiding the Austrian working class in freeing their chains from the National Socialist oppressors, and dispelling the propaganda of Anschluss in favor of socialism. In Slovenia, we finalized the complete liberation of core Slavic lands by performing one large-scale encirclement to trap the German forces into Slovenia and Istria by linking up with our ally the Italian Social Republic. After hard-fought battles throughout the Austrian Alps, we trapped the Germans in and liberated Ljubljana. Being surrounded by all sides, the German forces have no hope of rescue or evacuation. All they can do is delay the inevitable while they slowly surrender to our superior numbers and supply. We bottled the last few pockets down to Rijeka and the landlocked province in Istria, finally putting down a large number of German soldiers in the Triglav mountains. With our core lands finally liberated and the Bosphorus secure, now it is time for us to move in and destroy the greatest enemy of the Slavic race, once and for all. From Ukraine and Russia, we made preparations for an all-out offensive towards Poland, Belarus and the Baltics, once it became clear that the Germans were finally on the run. Our plan would involve the Ukrainian divisions moving up north to cut Ostland off from the rest of the German Reich proper, as well as another offensive to liberate Poland and Czechoslovakia, thereby starving the German forces preparing to invade Russia. Upon commencement of our operations, we moved our coastal defense divisions to our Czechoslovak Legion's base in Kosice, poised to defeat the collaborators in the west and reinforce Pan-Slavic worker solidarity. With the German Reich's reign of terror collapsing, the Czechoslovak Legion joined the fight. They declared the Slovak state illegitimate and called upon all Czechs and Slovaks to join them in the quest for liberation. Upon capturing Warsaw, the Polish collaborators moved to Krakow and we began closing in on Prague and Bratislava. With Krakow and Katowice captured in the north, the Slovak state was all but essentially encircled. German and Slovak collaborator troops made haste to the Tatra mountains for another last stand, hopeless as Austria had fallen and our forces had finally entered Bavaria. With the German troops completely disorganized, Augsburg, Munich and Nuremberg were ripe for the taking, as our offensives into Poland and Czechoslovakia to cut Ostland off achieved massive success. We feel the time is right to integrate the Mlado Rossi Transitional Authority and unite the thrones of Russia and Yugoslavia into one. With this full integration, the Russians finally joined the war, and with their resources, we shall spell the final death knell for the Reich's reign of terror and unite all Slavs under one banner. We sent the Russian divisions first into occupied Estonia and Latvia, completing a few smaller encirclements before reaching Lithuania. Another encirclement rendered the German forces in the Baltic states trapped and doomed to capture, just like their fellow soldiers in Istria. We closed in and disintegrated them with superior force, liberating the Baltic ports and linking the Russians up with the rest of the Eastern Front. With their help, we crossed the Oder River, sieging down the Sorbian capital Cottbus and reaching the outskirts of Berlin. We liberated Prague, Liberec, dismantled the last of the Reichsgau Sudetenland, and we finally captured Berlin, the center of the National Socialist Workers' Party. With the Germans now on their last legs, the remnants of the regime moved to Hamburg, refusing to admit that their days are numbered and their military has collapsed. To fully rub in the message, we made one more encirclement on them before capturing Hamburg to assert Slavic dominance over the so-called master race. Meanwhile, in the south, our Italian allies made one final gambit to seize Savoy, Nice, and Corsica, right before the German Reich finally capitulated, bringing an end to the oppression of Europe. In the peace deal, we liberated the lands of the Western Slavs, the lands of Savoy, Nice, and Corsica to Italy, gave independence to all Africans under the French jackboot, and began the process of centralizing Karelia, Czechoslovakia, and finally Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe. With that, all people of the Slavic race are united under Tsar Peter and Tito's Pan-Slavic Workers' Congress. To address the expansion of our new regime, we decided to move the capital. Moscow was struck off immediately to ensure the Russians cannot dominate our new Pan-Slavic Union, so we settled for Kiev. It was the birthplace of the Kievan Rus, and it's centrally located enough to administer our large multi-ethnic superstate. To celebrate the complete unification of all Slavic peoples, we adopted a new name, Velikoslavia, or Greater Slavia. To further consolidate Tsar Peter's power, we looked towards exporting the revolution to Finland. Memories of the Winter War remain fresh in the eyes of our Russian brothers, and it's up to us to avenge it. In contrast to Stalin, we made sure to better prepare for the winter. That, together with the fact that the Mannerheim line was in our borders, meant that the Finns were less capable of fighting back. We continued to advance with ease and bypass the gaps within their front line, capturing Helsinki and advancing to Vasa by the end of October. With our new tactics, we overran the entire country and destroyed their morale, succeeding where Stalin failed. The Finnish government capitulated, and in the peace deal, we absorbed it into our workers' union. Thus, we have avenged the Russian defeat in the Winter War, securing our supremacy over the Baltic Sea once and forevermore. Tito and Peter, two heroic sons, fully united all Slavs under the banner of communism, Tsar, and Panslavism from Belgrade to Vladivostok. Tito, as the Prime Minister of the Union of Velikoslavia, declared Tsar Peter Karađorđević of age to rule and ended the regency. Satisfied with having modeled him from an inexperienced boy king of Yugoslavia to a benevolent socialist Tsar, ruling a powerful dedicated empire of the working class against the capitalist order and the last vestiges of colonialism. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and have a good one.